a modern day lifestyle it's detrimental to the physical body, to the mental state. The human body is made to move. It's made to be challenged in such a way where it's forced to adapt to its environment. Because when you fill your own cup, when you are strong in yourself, when you are disciplined in your own health, like daily habits, what that does, it overflows into your family life, into your child's life. When I first experienced the TRE, which stands for trauma release exercise or tension release exercise, it just blew my mind what the body it was capable of, with the release of this stored tension that we have in our body.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks very much for joining me. One of the things that I like to do on this podcast is talk to people, talk to coaches who are working in health and performance and using some methods which are perhaps a little unconventional. And from the conversations that we've had already, I've seen that you've got a diverse skill set, and you employ some modalities that maybe the average gym goer, average fitness health enthusiast wouldn't have heard of, or at least hasn't heard of yet. So I'd really like to discuss some of those things and find out more about how you work with people. Some of the things like rope flow and steel mace work and the TRE work that you do. Perhaps we can get into some of those things. But maybe to start off with, could you tell me a bit about how you went from working on the sea to becoming a coach?
Well, hello everybody, and thank you, Imran, for inviting me onto the podcast. Like you said, we've had a couple of conversations. So when last year, 2022, couple of conversations connected online. Well, hello everybody. My name is Daniel. I'll start off growing up, my 20s. I spent days working at sea with my father, navigating the Atlantic Ocean, deep sea tuna fishing. From there was I learned what hard work and discipline is, and that really instilled that mindset inside of me, and realized having physical strength made my job a lot easier. My passion for fitness really grew on the deck of a tuna boat, with that daily grind, that hard work that goes into it every single day catching tuna, because the way that we do it is a very physical, what they call pole and line tuna fishing. So I did that for roughly 8 to 9 years, my early 20s towards 27, 28. And then from there, I left working at sea, still worked in the family business. But then from there found CrossFit. My sister was a CrossFit coach at that time, and I decided to go try it out. And with my work capacity that I already built from the years working on the deck, I flourished. In the first 3 months, I was certified as a CrossFit coach, and doing muscle ups 2 months into doing CrossFit with some of the people that was in the box. I've been doing CrossFit for a year and a half, and I come in from out of nowhere, and it really showed me what it meant to have a physical background compared to, say, somebody else that worked in office. Then from there, I dove deeper into physical training, and really built that passion in training and taking care of the body. I did CrossFit for about 2.5 years, and then COVID hit. Had a back injury as well. Before COVID, I had before lockdowns and that whole period of time, I had a back injury from CrossFit doing deadlifts, and from there I had found a couple of alternative healing modalities. One being the main one being TRE, which is trauma release exercise. With that back injury, I had this sciatica pain, this just a niggle constantly in my lower back. And I was talking to a friend, and he told me about TRE. His girlfriend was a TRE provider. I went to go see her, and when I first experienced the TRE, which stands for trauma release exercise or tension release exercise, it just blew my mind what the body was capable of, with the release of this stored tension that we have in our body. And I'll go more into exactly what that is. But yeah, that's a rough breakdown from, working at sea to going to CrossFit to learning TRE. And then there's a whole another period of other modalities and tools that I've picked up along the way.
Great. So was there a point, a pivotal moment when you decided that you wanted to help other people with their health and performance and fitness?
Yeah, so that is always been something that I've always wanted to do. So before I started working at sea, there was a time, in my life where, I thought of becoming a personal trainer. In that time, my mindset was my identity that I had in that time was not in a place where I saw that for myself. So it was, after leaving sea and, getting into CrossFit, it was in that time period where, I had this base of physical fitness that I had built, just from a place of, something that I needed for the work that I was doing. And over the years, you begin to see people walking around in this modern day lifestyles that they have, and how a modern day lifestyle is detrimental to the physical body, to the mental state. The human body is made to move. It's made to be challenged in such a way where it's forced to adapt to its environment. When I was working at sea, we are in constantly changing environments, and you adapt, whether it's a sleep deprivation or hard work for a good couple of days straight where you're physically moving. Your body adapts to it. And in a modern day lifestyle, it's very much comfortable, and people are having these pains and these general bodies that are deteriorating because of this comfort. And there was something in me that wanted to bring some form of change. So, going through that and teaching people CrossFit and taking people through that modality, and then moving into other alternative movement practices like steel mace, which I found extremely fun, and just something super cool to take a steel mace and swing it around your head and feel like a warrior in a way. And yeah.
And do you work with a particular client group, particular type of person?
So at now where I'm at with my own coaching is I'm focused on helping fathers, especially men and fathers, just build a stronger body and find purpose in movement. There's something that comes along with being able to have a strong body and have these healthy habits, because when you fill your own cup, when you are strong in yourself, when you are disciplined in your own health, like daily habits, what that does, it overflows into your family life, into your child's life. And that's something I see that happens for me is when I'm feeling in alignment, mentally, emotionally, and then physically. it always starts with a physical thing, especially for men, because we have this magical hormone in our body called testosterone. So when you put your body through a challenging workout, this testosterone, there's this inner power that comes from that, and you pouring from that overflow, from that self-care, in a way, that working out with a positive mindset, it overflows into your family life. And that's where my focus is really focusing on men and fathers, because I believe when you have a strong father in a family, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, there is something beautiful about that, because the whole family begins to thrive.
It mirrors some of the work I've done. I've worked with men and women who are busy with their careers, and typically with young families. And some of the women in particular, I've noticed they have just stopped prioritizing themselves. Everybody else comes first. Their children come first. Probably their parents come before them as well. And it's that old analogy of you have to put your own life jacket on first sometimes. You can't be fully capable and present and really giving your best if you're depleted. And I think there's a lot of people feel some guilt about taking time for themselves and investing in themselves when they have got responsibilities. But yeah, there's definitely a balance to be had there.
100%.
We were talking before we started recording about some of the traditional training methods, the type of stuff that you're doing in CrossFit, and that stuff certainly has its place. I've tried out many of those things myself. So maybe for somebody who has been down that road for a while, doing perhaps the Olympic lifts or the standard squats, deadlifts and presses, or maybe you're a runner and you've measured most of your improvements over the years in terms of how much you can lift or how fast you can run a set distance. What might they be leaving on the table by being unaware of some of these other modalities which you've specialized in, things like rope flow, things like the steel mace? So it's quite a broad question.
So what comes up for me when you brought that up was, before when you were talking, was how my training has from my personal training, how it has changed over the years, going from CrossFit into these other modalities, alternative modalities. It just makes you think of, like, when I was doing CrossFit, what generally happens in CrossFit boxes, or from what I've seen, is people get very much into the CrossFit. The community aspect is amazing. And what happens is people generally just stay in doing CrossFit. Like, they train just to do CrossFit. Outside of the box, outside of that gym, that community, there's not a lot of other activities that come into play. Like, so because of the heavy loads and the kinds of training, people are generally walking around with some form of pains, niggles, injuries, because they're pushing to get these numbers, to get a score on the board, competing with others, instead of using the training to build a base to go and do other activities like hiking, swimming, surfing, any form of other sport. It's generally, I've seen it happen where people get into CrossFit and they get into that go in the box, and that becomes the general fitness. And without that, they just, there's nothing else. That's just from what I've seen. And I saw that for myself, and I got more into hiking and getting outdoors and picking up some other modalities, because I saw there was a bit of a lack in certain movements in CrossFit, because CrossFit was generally like the up, down, left, right, picking up heavy weights, repetitive movements constantly. And it's, as much as it was, functionally varied, there was not a lot of rotation. So I picked up other modalities, like steel mace, which had a lot of rotation in it, especially when you're getting into the 360s. So that's physically taking a steel mace and doing a full 360 behind your head. And what that did for me, and I started unlocking my spine and getting into that spinal movement of using your spine to move a weight, which is off center on a long pole. It started waking up muscles that I hadn't used in a very long time. And it took me back to the time when I was working at sea. There was a lot of rotation when you are, physically fishing with tuna pole. You are pulling, you're using your whole body, the whole kinetic chain of, rotating and grabbing with your arm. It's a full body workout and getting into like this functional movement, which uses, all planes of movement. Yeah, and that's how I got into the steel mace part of things. And then there's a whole nother story when it comes into the rope flow.
Should I share at this point the rope flow video that we were looking at earlier?
Yeah, I'll start out by saying, like, I found, with a lot of these movement practices that I've picked up over the years, most of the time it's just been curiosity. When you on Instagram and you see something, you follow that. I call it intuition. It's like that inner compass where you feel this little bit of a pull into something. Oh, what's this? Let me explore. And you dive a little bit deeper into whatever this modality or what this thing is. And rope flow is one of those things. I found a Weck method. David Weck online. Thought he was a curious and eccentric fellow. And at that time there was lockdowns, and I had some old ropes from the boat at my apartment. It was locked down, and I just began repping it out and learning this new modality. And the more that I played around with it, the more I was blown away by something so simple as a rope can be such a profound tool to build a mind-muscle connection. And yeah, so this is a little bit of me, YouTube video of me doing some rope flow out in Cape Town with lovely Table Mountain in the background.
Yeah, talk us through what you're doing here.
So this movement is called a underhand figure of 8. So what the rope really does, it gives you such a nice feedback into your muscles, especially now into my spine, my thoracic spine, as I'm rolling my shoulders back. I'm also just shifting my feet and just getting into like a flow state. This is now an overhand figure of 8. And as you can see, I just transitioned from an underhand into an overhand, and using my shoulders, using my spine. Because of that feedback from that centrifugal force, that rotation of the rope, I am breathing nice and deep and allowing my spine to be nice and fluid, releasing a lot of the tension that I have, and then start getting into some more of the advanced movements like what's called a matador. So you can imagine if I was a matador with a red cape, I'd be, yeah. So getting into underhand, into sneaks, overhand sneaks, underhand sneaks. So what this does, it really helps with, that bilateral movement of, how can you say, like bilateral synchronized movements, which synchronizes both sides of the body, but also an added benefit is that it synchronizes both hemispheres of the brain. As the brain is connected, left hemisphere is connected to your right side of your body, your right hemisphere is connected to your left side of your body. And the connection between those two parts of your brain start to increase. It's very similar in the way that juggling can also stimulate your brain in such a way that it improves the connection with the mid part of your brain called the corpus callosum, which then, when you have your creative side and your logical side, and as those neural pathways begin to connect, you synchronize both sides of your body, and that's when you get into what they call a flow state. And for the most part, this is the easiest way that I have found for somebody to get into a flow state and into this feeling of what I call a movement meditation. So putting on some music and really getting into that flow of feeling this rope, feeling your body. It's really a great way to get your mind into your body, getting your mind into your muscles, stimulating through this object outside of yourself. Yeah. So that's rope flow.
And it looks cool.
And it looks cool. It looks cool. And it looks cool and it feels cool. Yeah. It's super fun.
Yeah, I've only tried a very little amount of it so far. So I've kind of used it at the beginning of sessions. Just a couple of basic moves. But yeah, particularly if I felt a bit lethargic, like didn't really feel like moving that much. Okay, I'll try some of this rope stuff. And 10 minutes or so. It does something different. It's not just warming you up. It's physically, it's not just raising your body temperature. There's definitely some more to it. You mentioned David Weck, and I think personally sometimes I see somebody like a David Weck character or an Ido Portal and doing lizard walks. You see something and it kind of captures your attention, and you think, what's going on here? This is outside the kind of stuff I've seen people doing before. But sometimes I think almost instinctively you think, I think there's something to that. I can see by the movement that there's some value in that. This could be something worth exploring. What was your journey into the steel mace? How did you first come across that?
So the steel mace came before the rope flow, and that was funny enough, it was a good friend of mine who was the head coach at the box where I was at. He had shared, or he had shown me, a steel mace video, and then just like you say, that something about it, you just noticed, oh, that looks cool. Like what does that feel like? So I'm one of those people like that experiences. I like to experience things. Like I'm a kinetic learner. So when I see something and it's something interests me, I want to go try it to see what it feels like. So I like being a white belt in that way. So I'll always go try out a new movement. If something intrigues me, I'll be the first one out there to like, okay, I'll try just to see what it feels like. And that's what it was with the steel mace. So I seen this, the gentleman's name is Leo Savage, and he had created what's called steel mace flow. And it was something about the way that he moved, with a steel mace, with this object. It was more about moving in a flow kind of way. So I'll take it back to how, like, the martial arts aspect of steel mace flow. It intrigued me because I did karate when I was very young. From the age of 5 to 12, I did karate. So there was some martial art aspect to the steel mace flow, which intrigued me. And I saw, this man, he had this literally a steel mace. It looked like it is a weapon in essence, but it's a training tool. And he was moving with it, but moving in such a way that it looked beautiful. Like he was dancing with it. And it made me think of, those ancient samurai that, when they move and practice a kata. So in karate, you practice a kata where you are essentially pretending that you are fighting against a group of people, and you are practicing this set movements over and over, and you are refining it. And that's what steel mace flow was moving with a mace in such a way that you are repeating these movements, where these movements then become unconscious, and you can start connecting multiple movements and, say, listen to a piece of music. And now that movements become your dance moves to the music, and you can move energy, or at least emotion, through your body and find some form of healing while you're exercising. So it's literally stacking movement, movement therapy, meditation, all of these things all into one modality. And that was when I dived deeper into steel mace. Well, I only figured out, from after diving into it, and it's been a really cool journey.
Yeah, I think a movement like CrossFit a few years ago was a breath of fresh air, because it did open things out. It was more expansive, but there's no complete system as far as I can see. And having the instinct to explore just seems to make sense. I think having a systemized way of getting stronger, of getting better conditioning, that's valid. But there's so many gaps to be filled in between. So being an early adopter of these types of modalities, what's it like for you where you're based? What's it like in South Africa? Is there much of a scene of this type of training, or are you leading the charge on this?
So, I'd say I'll start with, the steel mace. It was close to 3 years ago that I'd started using a steel mace, or, I went out of my way to actually go and make steel maces. I did the course, I got certified. I was super excited about that, and becoming a steel mace flow coach. And it was very hard for me to get a steel mace in South Africa, first of all. So I had a friend make me one. And then from there, I started doing some R&D. And I started producing and fabricating my own steel maces, got me a fabricator, and, started producing and making steel maces. Being an early adopter, it was difficult in the beginning, to get people to jump on this new modality, this new way of moving. Like you say, you mentioned there with like the CrossFit, already even that time, it was seen, from the general bodybuilder, scene in South Africa, in Cape Town. If you did CrossFit, they'd automatically make fun of your butterfly pull-ups, and all the kipping and things that you would do. And now bringing in a steel mace, I was very much a lone ranger in that way. It was very few people that were interested in doing steel mace. But I've seen a shift, as I've noticed in South Africa, they are somewhat like 2 years behind on certain modalities. And that gap is getting smaller, that's for sure. So I've seen a lot more interest in steel mace now, and same with the rope flow. I've been fortunate enough to connect with a lot of kite surfers and a lot of surfers in my local area, and gotten quite a few people into rope flow, and produce my own ropes as well as sell them and teach people rope flow and get them into moving, because those movements that you learn and you get from rope flow, what it teaches you in your body, how to move in a kinetic chain, like using the full body, shifting your body weight, head over foot, and getting that rotation really transfers nicely into sports and movements that are on the water, especially surfing, kite surfing.
I see. Let's maybe segue into some of the other areas that you've explored and utilized. You mentioned at the beginning TRE, and you gave a bit of a teaser that we might talk a bit more about that. Yeah, so can you explain a bit more how that works, and how you might use that with clients?
So, with all of these movements and modalities that I've, accumulated or, have in my tool belt, I'd say, coming from C, working at years at sea, you learn how to navigate the ocean. And in this way, it's been this really introspective journey and beautiful journey of learning new tools to navigate the human body, and different tools for different situations. So it's learning to I've said this before, was like I've become like a bio navigator of navigating someone's body through movement or through a mental tool or an emotional tool. So TRE is one that goes into a bit of an emotional body tool. So TRE, like I've said before, is tension release exercise or trauma release exercise. I try and stay away from that particular name just because people see the trauma side of it as, generally people put up a wall straight away when you say, you want to do TRE or, bring up trauma. They initially have a resistance. So, no, I don't have any trauma. But seeing TRE as, or the trauma aspect of it can be capital T or small t. So a back injury, or, you just upregulated, or you super stressed, you have a very upregulated nervous system. So TRE is something that I use with clients to downregulate them, to get them in a base state, so it's easier for them to make cognitive decisions, or at least change their mindset in a way. And that's a whole nother tool that I use when it comes to the mindset aspect, going into story work and language work. But back to TRE, in essence, what TRE is what's called self-induced neurogenic tremors. So it is a way that the body can activate these natural tremors that we have, that we can activate in our body through certain stretches and exercises, especially fatiguing and stretching the psoas muscle, which then brings about this natural tremoring response, which down-regulates the nervous system because it's connected to our vagus nerve. And it basically tremoring through the muscles, through the fascia, down-regulates the nervous system in such a way and releases the stored tension that we have in our muscles, in our fascia. And it's something for somebody to really experience, because explaining it or seeing it on a video can be sometimes a bit jarring for people, because it can look like somebody's having some form of a fit. And I always tell people, like, I can have a full-on conversation with you while I'm busy tremoring, because it is a different part of the brain. It's going back into like the reptilian brain. It's going back into a older part of the brain where, it's that tremoring is activated, and then you can still have a full cognitive ability to have a full conversation with someone. So that's a bit about TRE.
Are people ever resistant to try it?
Oh, yes, of course. Especially like if they've seen videos, or they generally fear the thought of not being in control, because you aren't cognitively controlling the tremoring. It's your body doing it itself. So that thought in itself can be very scary, because the ego mind that wants to have control, and that's where that unconscious stress can sideswipe you. Talking from experience, I had experienced Bell's palsy when I was working at sea, and that was one of the reasons why I got out of working at sea, was that unconscious stress that I was holding, and waking up one day in the morning where the left side of my face was completely paralyzed. And this is in the middle of the ocean. And it was from there where, the body, it has this intelligent way of telling you that something is wrong, through pain, through sickness, through dis-ease in the body. And learning to listen to that is something I like to teach my clients, is learning to listen to the body. And from there, in getting curious, you can find a solution. TRE being one of those solutions, where the body has a very innate intelligence where it knows what to do, and it knows how to downregulate and de-stress without the thinking mind getting in the way.
Okay, I'm trying to picture this. So how long does a session last, and what's the right kind of environment to do it in? I'm guessing that you're not doing this in the on the gym floor.
Not after a good practice and learning to be comfortable with this tremoring. So, we are all mammals have the ability to tremor. Animals do this in the wild. There's a video of a gazelle that gets caught by a cheetah. It has a cheetah by its neck, and the cheetah gets bored with this gazelle and wanders off, and the camera is still on the gazelle, and the gazelle just starts tremoring, starts shaking, gets up, and you can see he's all shaky. If you want to use the word, it's traumatized in a way. He can't go about the rest of his day grazing the grass, thinking like, oh my, I can't eat, I can't do anything, I'm traumatized. So this natural tremoring begins to happen in its body. It shakes, and it shakes for a good while on the floor, gets up, and it wanders off completely fine. Because it has to reset its nervous system, has to reset, all of that fight and flight, that freeze mode, that cortisol, that adrenaline that was pumping through its body, the tenseness that it had in its muscles as it was being chased by this cheetah and being caught by this cheetah, in its body, it's perhaps thought, well, I'm going to die now. So things had to shut down, or at least freeze. And then it didn't. So it has to reset that whole system. And that's what the tremoring really does. I've lost the question. I'm going to have to repeat that again.
No, that was a good comparison to draw, because I have heard of that. I have heard of animals after they've had some kind of stress or physical trauma, doing this kind of shaking. And it makes sense that, we would have a similar system. I think the question was, what does a session actually look like? How long are you working with someone, and where does it take place?
So I do sessions in person and online. With it being online, from lockdowns and going through studying TRE online, it's really opened me up to teaching people, all around the world. So in the comfort of your own home, especially if you have a quiet room, creating that space. A session is generally 60 minutes. And I always have it, in a package, or, from 4 to 6 sessions. And that's just so I can see that the client or the person is able to self-regulate. So they know when to slow down or when to stop the tremors, especially in the beginning, because their nervous system is not yet used to the tremors. So it can feel very overwhelming in the beginning. A session looks like, having just a check-in, seeing how someone's feeling. I generally ask the question of if you were to rate yourself from 1 to 10, what does it look like? What do you feel like? And if somebody comes into a session very stressed, they're giving a reading of I'm feeling a 9 today, super overwhelmed, very triggered or very short-tempered. And, going through a TRE session, there's a couple of stretches and exercises that, I show or guide people through. And then once they begin a session, sometimes in the first or second session, there can be very little tremors, and you can tremor for maybe 5 to 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But by the third or fourth session, there's a switch where the body begins to realize, or at least the ego begins to realize, the thinking mind begins to realize oh, I'm safe. I'm feeling safe, being guided by this person, by this TRE provider. And, tremoring can come through the body, and you can see sometimes there's a bit of like a resistance, a bit of a scare to this person. And like, I have to ask them these questions while they're going through a session, like, how are you feeling? Are you okay with that? And building that internal safety for them by asking these questions, because everything that is happening in the body is very natural and it's very normal. Not one session or one client is going to look the same as another person, because everybody has their own holding patterns, their own tension patterns throughout their body. So you can have some unique surprises in the way that some people can tremor. Some people can go through the 6 sessions and have very little tremors, and that can be that they're holding a lot of tension, or at least their mind has resistance to really letting the body do what it wants to do. And then I can have people go through one session where they're just having this hysterical shaking throughout their body, and they go into complete laughter because they are so amazed at their body. And that can tell me a lot about person's mind-muscle connection.
Fascinating stuff. Something I'm definitely going to have to look into more. So what are you currently focused on learning? What are you excited to learn about? Or is there anyone that you would like to train with at the moment?
For me at the moment, like what's really lighting me up at the moment is, incorporating, other modalities when it comes to the mindset piece. I've worked a lot with like the physical body, with the physical body from like the CrossFit, the steel mace, the rope, and then the emotional side or the tension side, the stress side with the TRE. And I've moved a lot into working with clients with story work, the mindset piece, and taking, mindset, which can be such a broad term, when you hear people say, should have a positive mindset. And I've gone through a program called Enlifted, which has really given me the tools to help people with their mindset in such a practical way, because it's taking mindset and it's taking it to its core, which is really the words that we use and this repetition of these words. And most people are walking around with using a lot of negative words, and have this negative inner dialogue, which, the stories that they tell themselves about themselves. And that creates that negative mindset. And having this tool and the skill set to help people shift that has been so, seeing the results of it has been so amazing and so fulfilling on my side, but fulfilling on their side, because it changes their whole paradigm. And it literally changes the whole paradigm, because it changes the lens in which they see the world, because they begin to notice this inner dialogue, the words that they use. So yeah, that's something I'm practicing a lot and using a lot of it, because it plugs in so easily with like the other work that I do with the movement side and the TRE side. And then tying that all together is, seeing all of this through an holistic lens, and seeing, it's always been about the mindset. It's always been about the emotional side and the physical side, and then tying it all together through like a spiritual lens of like, well, this is my human body, and I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. If you want to go like that route, or see it through like that, it's, this helping other people have a better human experience is what's really exciting me, and tying that all together through that holistic lens.
You mentioned earlier that your main focus in terms of the people you work with at the moment is fathers.
Yes.
So yeah, what are you offering there? Would you like to talk a bit more about that?
So I'm currently working on a 1-month program. The name for it at the moment, it's that's up in the air to change, called Forge Fathers. So that's a month program of, going through this identity piece of, fathers that become fathers. And you mentioned it earlier, where people lose that self-care, where it becomes, focused on the child, on the family, and they lose that focus on themselves, and their health deteriorates. And it's that analogy of, putting your own life vest on first before, helping someone, or, putting your your oxygen mask on first before, anybody else. And I like the analogy of, like, you fill your own cup. You fill your own cup first, and you pour from that overflow. And that's what I am working on, is focusing on fathers and helping them cultivate the healthy habits that go into filling up their own cup, so they can pour from that overflow, which flows into their family. And from there, you have this power, this influence in your family, where you can inspire them to do the same. Because kids, that's how kids really learn. They learn from observation. They learn from mimicking their caregivers, their fathers, their mothers. So when you are taking care of yourself, your child sees that. They see how you take care of yourself. So they would automatically learn that through observation, through mimicry, to take care of themselves and see themselves as, oh, I'm important. I'm a person, and I'm going to take care of myself. My wife had this actually sent me a message not long ago, where, she sent me a message that she wanted to get back into the gym, into working out, into taking care of herself, because she's feeling inspired by, by me. And it's just by me focusing and doing my thing, and being in integrity with that, and having my values around, my health, what that does for my family, what that does for my wife. I mean, yesterday I was having a bit of a crazy day, and she's like, no, go to gym for an hour, come back a better dad. Because she knows, like, if I was to go get a workout in and feel better, because we were stuck in the house the whole day, she knows that I'll come back feeling better, feeling more relaxed, feeling more myself. And then from there, I can pour from the overflow. So when it comes to the program that I have, finding that all back to that, is teaching and guiding men, fathers, through that process of cultivating those healthy habits. So that's, and then I've got another program, a 90-day holistic program, where it ties a lot of all these things all together. If you already have a movement practice, if you already have a gym routine, it ties into all the little things that stack up upon each other, when it comes to movement, the mindset, the nutrition, and, the sleep, which we call, like, the foundational four. And I help and guide men to build those out over a 3-month period, where they create their own healthy habits and really instill them into their life, where it becomes a lifestyle, a holistic lifestyle.
Daniel, this has been a pleasure. Really good to get some insights into the varied approaches that you're using, and hopefully for people to find out about what you offer, and at least get a basic understanding of these different ideas. Where can people connect with you or find out more?
So they can connect with me on Instagram at Dan de Pao. So that's DanDePao. And yeah, just reach out to me on Instagram. I do have a link there, but send me a DM. I'm always open to have a conversation. Yeah, and just connect with more, men who are looking to live a holistic lifestyle, or feel more aligned, feel healthier, so they can go out from, surviving to, a thriving, and really thriving for their family, for the future generation, for their kids. I want to see fathers out there, having adventures with their kids on the daily.
Fantastic. So I'll include links to where people can contact you, and yeah, definitely check out Daniel's Instagram. You'll see some great scenery, some different ways to move, and yeah, it's an inspiring profile. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Imran. Thank you for having me on the podcast, and thanks for everybody for listening. Ciao.